From the men who brought you basically a sports show if your football fix wasn't met on Thursday night, it's time for an additional slice. This is basically a football show right now. Let's go!
Get it in here! I got one thing to say. This is when the big dogs come out. Okay? You can't roll the big dogs. Stay on the board.
Smash everybody in the mouth. Take the running backs to the stands. Run up in the stands and slap their mama.
Hey, baby! We're going to be here all day, baby! I like this kind of party. I like this kind of party, baby.
His method is not Grand Prix, but Demolition Derby.
We move now to the AFC, and just because there's nice symmetry, and because the other Super Bowl representative came out of this division, we'll start in the West. And, I think easily the best team in the AFC still is the Denver Broncos. Of course, finished last year 13-3. Peyton Manning comes back for another year. Von Miller's not suspended. Wes Welker is going on his third concussion in a year. And they bring in DeMarcus Ware on defense to help solidify that team. They made a lot of moves on defense because they saw exactly what beat them so badly in that Super Bowl. I mean, from the very first series, nothing went right. Snap going over Peyton Manning's head into the end zone for a safety of all things. Despite having as good of a season as you could have had, they finished it in the worst possible way. And now Denver has to replicate it just with a different ending at the end.
I came into tonight wanting to find a reason not to pick the Broncos to not only win this division but represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I can't come up with one. Mm-hmm. The only thing I could see derailing this team would be if Peyton Manning gets hurt. But every team he's played for has done a really good job of keeping him upright, and he gets the ball out before he gets hit. So, yeah, they're the class of the division.
Actually, some breaking news here about the Broncos.
Uh-oh. Who got suspended?
Wes Welker suspended 4 games for PEDs.
Oh, yeah, I saw that before we started. For amphetamines is what I read.
Yeah, I just got a little note here on my phone. 4-game suspension. Coach John Fox says very disappointing for our team. I think they probably weren't going to play him early anyway.
Right.
Because of, all this concussion stuff is scary for him. But I
don't think that taking amphetamines is probably the smartest move when you've had all those concussions either. But
no, but he was wearing the giant helmet in practice this week and whatever.
Honestly, do you think that Wes Welker not being there is going to slow down Peyton Manning that much? I don't think so.
No, because his favorite receivers there were still Eric Decker, who's gone, but Demaryius Thomas, Julius Thomas. He loves throwing the running backs out of the backfield. You can find another slot receiver to do Wes Welker's job.
I think that if you and I were playing the slot receiver for the Broncos, we'd still manage to get 3 or 4 catches a game. I'm not too worried about it. As long as you've got Peyton back there throwing the ball, the guys, I won't say they're not important. You don't need the very best receivers to get the job done.
No.
That's what I think.
Yeah. But, I don't know what else there is to say about this team. They've improved on defense because they needed to.
Right.
Because they saw what happened to them in the Super Bowl. And their expectations are the same as last year. And I think the results are going to be the same as last year. Not necessarily them losing in the Super Bowl, but winning the division easily. Because I think Kansas City falls back.
Oh, definitely.
And Oakland's still bad. San Diego might be a little bit better, but not terribly much.
A lot of people in love with those San Diego Chargers, too. And I'm not seeing it. I'm sorry.
But 13-3, 14-2, it's not out of the question for Denver.
I think that I'm with you. There's not a lot to say. They were really good last year. They're even better this year. The only thing you could say, really, is that Peyton's a year older.
Right, but that age doesn't exactly...
It doesn't seem to bother him that much.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to affect them as much as people thought it might have. But, and let's see, who do they got playing this year? They're playing the AFC East, and looks like the AFC West. So some easier games there on their schedule.
Yeah, again, they're the class of the division. They're probably the class of the AFC, and short of Manning getting hurt, I don't see really a lot of weaknesses on that team.
No, but they do open with the Peyton Manning Bowl on Sunday night as the Colts travel to Denver. So that'll be interesting because if you remember when the Broncos did travel to Indianapolis last year, the Colts beat Peyton.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting. But besides that, they're, like I said, they're playing the West and the East, and they go to Cincinnati late in the year. That's not exactly
or Cincinnati doesn't scare me very much.
Right.
They're 13-3, 14. Hell, you might even see a 15-1 season out of them this year because first off, they're the best team. Secondly, you're going to have a very pissed off Peyton Manning at quarterback, which isn't going to help anybody at all, and he's going to be in total FU mode, and it'll just sit back and enjoy it because you're not going to get that many more years of it.
Nope. The second place team from last year was the Kansas City Chiefs. Started off 8-0. Because they didn't play anyone,
right? And
then they played the Broncos 2 and 3 weeks, and that set them on a course to more of what they were really at. But they got booed by the early start, finished off 11-5 as a wild card team, and of course in the playoffs they go to Indianapolis, get that huge lead, only to slowly but surely lose it as long. Well, yeah, they blow that lead along with losing several of their running backs in the process. They played well above their heads last year.
Yeah, I
think we can all agree on that.
We talked about it last year that they weren't as good as their record, and this year they're not going to get that soft schedule. It's going to be this is a team that's going to really regress. I see them falling back a lot like the Panthers did. Maybe not quite as bad, because they've still got Jamal Charles. They're still a pretty well-coached team, but there's no way they go 11-5 this year. Just no way.
No, there's no way they go 11-5. I don't think they even make the playoffs.
No,
again.
I don't either. I'm thinking 6-10, 7-9, probably 8-8, somewhere in there.
Maybe 8-8.
Yeah.
I think 8-8's fine. Because Jamal Charles is on the downside. Dwayne Bowe is on the downside.
Yeah.
They got Alex Smith, he's fine. He's okay. 11-5 is not what they're going to be.
Well, you look at a league where you've got Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. We'll even throw Russell Wilson in there. Do you really think, if you're a Chiefs fan, that you're going to win the Super Bowl with Alex Smith at quarterback?
No,
it's just not going to happen. They need to improve at that position.
They were only 5-3 at home last year too, all the signs point to them regressing.
Yep.
And everybody else that I can see is on the same page with that. Maybe they see all this and say, no, well, we were good last year. How dare you? And win a few games that they shouldn't. But I don't know if they don't have the talent to do that.
They might win a few games they shouldn't, but they're not going to win enough games to make the playoffs. That's for certain.
Right. The team that I think will probably make the playoffs and finished second place in the division. The San Diego Chargers last year finished 9-7 and get into the playoffs based on a strange series of tiebreakers. And because they had their destiny in their hands going into the final game of the season, and they didn't have to rely on the tiebreakers. I'm sorry, they didn't have to rely on the tiebreakers, but they avoided the tiebreakers in the most asinine way possible. If you remember them. Kansas City got the field goal late with time expiring, misses it, then they go into overtime and somehow pull it out.
That's right. They played. We kept referring to it as playing Kansas City's JV team last year.
Right, and the JV team nearly put the Chargers out of the playoffs.
Right.
They were one of those teams that didn't look like they were all that interested in being in the playoffs. But they get in, they win their first round game at Cincinnati, and they get the Broncos a pretty good game, at least for the first half, before Denver ends up winning it respectably. But I think the Chargers are – I think the best you saw of the Chargers last year are going to be kind of what they are this year. I do like them. I don't know if it's too much more than 9-7, probably 10-6.
I could see them. I could see them reeling off a 10-6 season, maybe 11-5. But a couple people I've heard say they're going to knock off the Broncos. I don't see how that's going to happen.
I don't think so either. Peyton has had his troubles with San Diego in the past, but he didn't have too much trouble with the Broncos last year. San Diego. I think Kansas City regresses and Oakland's terrible, so San Diego has to be second place, right?
Right, and
that's an easy 4 wins on the schedule.
Yeah, and if you look at the rest of the AFC, thinking in terms of wild cards, I think San Diego's they're better than a lot of the teams in the AFC outside of, say, the Patriots.
Right.
Along those lines. So, I could see them making a wild card pretty easy.
you look at the rest of the teams in the AFC, and I mean, outside of the division winners, second place is 8-8, 8-8, 7-9.
Right.
And there was a reason two teams both came out of the AFC West last year, because the rest of the conference was awful.
Yeah.
Awful. I mean, even the good teams weren't all that great.
No.
I mean, the Patriots went 12-4, but is that a 12-4 Patriots team that you know from the past?
No.
Not really.
No.
The Bengals won the division because somebody had to.
Right.
And same with the Colts. I mean, the Colts were probably a little bit better, at least at the beginning of the year, but these aren't elite-level teams that you're going up against.
No,
even the better teams outside of Denver. But
you've got Denver and New England at the top, and then there's the next level. And I'd say of that next level, San Diego's probably the best of the bunch.
Yeah. I think if San Diego's in any other division, they probably win it.
Oh yeah,
outside of the East. If they're in the North or South, I think they win those divisions.
Oh God, if they're in the North or the South, more and particularly the North, they probably go 14-2. But
yeah. But rounding out the AFC West in last place, probably going to be in last place again. Although, the quarterback situation may make this a little bit interesting. But the Oakland Raiders 4-12 last year and still playing in the sewage-spilling Coliseum.
Yeah, and they're going to be 4-12 again this year. I mean, they're going to try to recycle.
They're going to be 4-12 when they go to San Antonio.
Yeah, they're going to try to recycle Matt Schaub and see if they can get something out of him. No,
Matt Schaub is not the starter.
No.
Derek Carr.
Oh, that's right. I did read that today. Yes, I did read that today. You're right.
And the funny point there is when Matt Schaub went to Houston, he replaced David Carr. And now when he's in Oakland, he gets replaced by Derek Carr. So it all comes full circle for Matt Schaub. You know who the running back is there in Oakland?
Is it still
they signed?
I was going to say, Darren McFadden I know is there, but who did they sign?
I think McFadden's still there, but they also signed Maurice Jones-Drew.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. They could have used him 3 or 4 years ago, but
yeah. And then Dennis Allen's still the head coach there. Why? I don't know. The problem is you see there's a lot of teams I don't want to cross over sports too much, but you look at yesterday the Astros fired their manager.
I don't get that at all. But that's for Thursday.
But that's what I see here with Oakland. It's like, they're probably going to end up firing him. But why?
Right.
What have you done as a front office to provide either in the Houston example or this example, provide them with players to win?
Yeah, I mean,
the coach can only do so much. If he has nothing to play with,
exactly. I don't care. The greatest coach in football can't do anything if you've got the players that the Oakland Raiders have. There's just nothing there. There's no there, as Yogi Berra once said, to keep in the baseball motif. But yeah, they're just awful. And I've told you guys this on basically a sports show. For someone that grew up when the Raiders were really one of the elite franchises in football, it just blows my mind how awful they've become. I can't get over it.
They weren't even that bad 10 years ago.
Right.
What was that, 12 years ago, I guess, when they were in the Super Bowl?
Yeah, 2002, yeah.
But since that Super Bowl, they have been awful. They haven't made the playoffs since then, have they?
I
don't think so.
No.
No. Maybe Derek Carr turns them around, I guess, but it says something when you bring in a guy like Matt Schaub and what a fall off the cliff Matt Schaub's had.
Yeah, his confidence was destroyed last year. I just don't think he comes back from that.
No, but
maybe as a backup. I mean, why not? If you can pull a check sitting on the bench carrying a clipboard, why the hell not? But
right,
yeah, they're going to be awful, just awful.
They're going to be pretty bad. But despite having one of the worst teams in football with the Oakland Raiders, Denver Broncos class of the division, and they'll probably win it. And San Diego will be pulling through the jet stream right behind them to probably make the playoffs as well.
Yeah, and the other two teams, Kansas City is going to be wondering why they're not as good as they were last year, and we'll all be saying because you weren't that good last year. And Oakland will all go, well, you know what, their uniforms look good, and that'll be that.
All right, we'll reluctantly, we got to move on to the rest of the AFC.
Talk about divisions you don't want to talk about.
And we're going to get the two bad ones out of the way here really quickly. And unfortunately for the both of us, they both contain our two favorite teams. We'll start with the AFC North. the division winner last year was Cincinnati. They went 11-5 because everybody else sucked.
Yep.
And I don't see any reason for them to not be the division champions again this year, if only because someone has to be. Right?
I will say this. I think that we talked about it last year. I feel the same way about them this year. There is some talent on that Cincinnati team. I don't think they know how to utilize it as well as they could. So they won last year kind of by default. They went 11-5. That surprises me. I mean, I know they did, but I don't remember them being 11-5 good last year. I think this year, I think they fall back a little bit. I like to win that division this year, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think that they make a nice comeback this year. I just think they're better coached. They might not have as much talent, but I don't know how much longer you hang with Marvin Lewis. I mean, because even at an 11-5 season that they had last year, they've got better talent than they've ever played up to with that team in a long time.
And I mean, the way that they just fell apart in the playoffs. I mean, you have a San Diego team that used to playing outside in warm weather, and they go to Cincinnati for a road playoff game in January.
Right.
And now the weather wasn't terrible, but it was still kind of cold. But at the same point, they were not the better team on the field that day. Well, San Diego beat them up and down the field.
Here's the thing about the Bengals, and this is something that we talked about it last year. They don't win playoff games, and I remember saying, like, look, the law of big numbers says they have to win one of these eventually. And so I said, they're going to finally pull it off this time. And nope, they couldn't do it again. And they let San Diego come in and just walk all over them at home. And that, to me, again, with the talent they've got, I think that at some point you've got to start blaming the coaching because I think they're a better team than they play. And that's why I like the Steelers to win the division. I think Mike Tomlin will coach circles around Marvin Lewis every day of the week.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to see the epitome of what the Cincinnati Bengals are, you just look at the offseason and you see the contract they signed Andy Dalton for.
Right.
Like, what has he done to deserve that?
Went 11-5.
Yeah, okay, he's been a decent quarterback. He's not top 5.
Nope.
He's barely top 10.
I don't even know if I'd go top 10, honestly.
Well, right. I mean, I'm giving him a little benefit of the doubt, I guess.
Sure.
But they have A.J. Green, one of the best wide receivers in football. They have some young running backs that I like in Giovanni Bernard.
Right.
Their defense has actually been pretty good over the last few years. Yep. But they lose their defensive coordinator, Mike Zimmer, to Minnesota. And they lose their offensive coordinator, Jay Gruden, to Washington. So they lose both their coordinators. Marvin Lewis is still there to kind of hold it together. And Marvin Lewis is more of a defensive coach. So the defense is still probably good with Vontaze Burfict there in the middle. But, maybe I think they have the best offense of the 4 teams in the division, but that's not saying a whole lot.
No.
I think if there's something that wins them the division, it's the fact that they can score a little bit more points than anybody else in the division can.
Yeah, I mean, they could certainly win the division again this year. They probably should, but they're the Bengals, and I don't recall them ever being good 2 years in a row. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but I'm not sold on them. I think that they could easily go 11-5 again because that division is just that bad. Yeah. But I could see them just as easily going 8-8. So.
And speaking of the teams that win 8-8, we'll start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They were another team that they were bad for reasons I couldn't explain last year.
Started out slow, but they came on strong towards the end. Yeah,
they did, and if San Diego had lost that game to Kansas City there at the end, I believe the Steelers would have won that weird 3-way tiebreaker.
Yeah, they would have,
and that would have just been. I mean, we hate on certain teams in other leagues for kind of derping their way into the playoffs. And that would have been a very Pittsburgh Steelers thing to do that and then go to Cincinnati and probably win that playoff game.
But if you remember, though, last season when we were talking about the Steelers, we were saying that if they got in, they were scary because they were playing pretty good football at that point.
Right.
So, yeah, they kind of derped their way into the play, or they would have, but that's why I like them to win the division this year. I think they were better than they played last year. And even a bad Steelers team still managed to go 8-8.
Yeah, I mean, they lose both their running backs to a suspension.
How many suspensions have there been this season?
A lot.
Going into it, I should say.
Right. Well, I mean, the good part about this one, it was LeGarrette Blount and Le'Veon Bell, they get busted for marijuana, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this is beautiful.
And,
Go ahead.
Le'Veon Bell gets quoted as saying, I didn't know you could have a DUI from smoking weed.
Yeah, he said, I didn't know you could get a DUI for being high, is what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I smoked 2 hours ago. I didn't know. God damn. And, I mean, he was smoking with a guy named Blunt, so, you know,
How
he's
perfect.
just asking for it.
Yeah, really.
So they're going to be without the running game for a little bit. Antonio Brown's still a very good receiver. You still got Troy Polamalu on defense.
You got Big Ben at the quarterback
You got
position.
Big Ben, but I think this is a situation where it's kind of like the San Antonio Spurs in a way, where you have this team and they're consistently good, but they just keep getting older. And, I mean, it hasn't happened with San Antonio where they haven't regressed. But I think Pittsburgh is starting to get down the road of I don't know how much better this group of players can be together.
That's a good point.
You know, they've been around. They've been together, this core group, for a long time. Slowly but surely, pieces have fallen off. They lose James Harris, and he retires this year. You know, and Heath Miller has been the tight end there forever, and his skills have diminished greatly over his years of being in Pittsburgh. And you know, they don't have the same kind of hard-nosed running game that you know the Pittsburgh Steelers were having. And I don't know. I just don't. I could see because of how the division is set up that yes, maybe if they get off on the right foot this year, they could get to 9-7, maybe 10-6, and they got to hope that Cincinnati doesn't win their fair share of games again. But
I mean, you know, 9-7 could win that division by 3 games.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on if Cincinnati regresses as much as people think.
I don't know. I mean, you know, thinking about it logically, you'd almost be silly to pick the Steelers over the Bengals. But
right.
you got to remember, I have grown up watching these Steelers teams. I have a lot of faith in their front office. I don't know what their draft was, but I know that they're the Steelers, and I know that they always do pretty good. Of course, they haven't been that great in the draft lately. But I don't know. I mean, you know, if I had to put money on it, I'd probably bet on the Bengals. But like I said, I'm gonna go off the boards here a little bit and say that I like the Steelers to win this division this year, just because it's that bad and they're the Steelers.
We'll move on to the other 8-8 team, the team that people, I don't know, I always seem to forget that they have some of the guys that they do have, and maybe they put it together and win the division, because again, somebody eventually has to. The Baltimore Ravens, 8-8 last year, after winning the Super Bowl the year before. Obviously, last season Ray Rice took a big dip in terms of production,
right?
And of course, he's suspended for the 2 games. To start this season.
But you know, you think about it for a second, though. I think if I'm the Ravens front office, I would have wished that suspension was for more, not necessarily because of what he did, just because it would keep him off the field longer.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Ray Rice has taken up a lot of attention, and he's going to get a lot of carries because he's Ray Rice.
Yeah.
But I don't know if he deserves it anymore.
Oh, no.
He was not good last year.
Not at all.
And then Joe Flacco.
Drop back and throw it far and see what happens.
Drop back and throw it as far as you can at Torrey Smith. And now they got Steve Smith there to help him out, too.
Yeah, Steve Smith doesn't have the speed to do that anymore. He's the guy that he'll throw to for like a 5-yard slant, and then he'll just, you know.
Right.
I think back about it, and you think about that Super Bowl that they won, and what did they go, 10-6 that season?
Yeah.
Ended up upsetting the Broncos in Denver on basically what happened. Drop back, throw it as far as you can. Yeah. And I just think about it and I go, man, you know, how in the hell did they ever beat the 49ers? Because there's just no way in the world that they were the better team that day. But these are things that happen. But Baltimore probably 8-8 again because they're the Ravens, and that's what they do.
Yeah. I mean, and that defense is not what it used to be.
No.
And, you know, it's up to whether Joe Flacco can connect on enough Hail Marys. Because Ray Rice isn't going to run for, 200 yards anymore.
No.
So, but rounding out the bottom, everyone's favorite team. Last year they went 4-12. This year, sky is the limit for the Cleveland Browns.
Okay, before we start with the Browns, I have one question to ask.
Yes.
Is it possible to improve and still get worse? Because I think that's kind of what they did this year.
Yeah, I think Cleveland just needs to be bad for another year.
Okay.
Because
what the hell? It's been 15 already. What's one more, right?
Well, here's my reasoning. If I think part of the problem the thing that really kind of hit them harder than you would have thought is Josh Gordon, his suspension. Because, I mean, he was one of the best receivers in football last year. And, whether it's Brian Hoyer all season or he gets replaced by Johnny Manziel at some point, you need someone to throw to. And you can't throw every pass to Jordan Cameron.
Nope, they're going to try.
Right, but their defense has gotten better. They still have some offensive weapons. They don't have Trent Richardson anymore. But I think if Josh Gordon was on this team, they might have been able to stumble into a division championship, maybe, if things all broke right for them. But right now, I think just because there's so much indecision with them going with Johnny. I think if they didn't even pick up Johnny Manziel and there's no quarterback controversy, they might have been in better shape too. Yeah, because I think that's something that kind of didn't set them in the right direction. They didn't have a singular focus. And maybe if they drafted a running back instead, who knows what the Browns could do. But I think they're in a situation where they got to see how long they can go with Brian Hoyer, eventually put him Johnny Manziel, and then turn it over to him and hope that you get a good 2 or 3 years out of the kid. Because if we mentioned in the RG3 discussion, that's where it might end. If
he turns out to be able to play like he did at Texas A&M, which after watching the Aggies last weekend, you're all of a sudden wondering, wow, was he just a system quarterback? Who knows? But right. This is what the Browns, it's very simple. Okay, the defense, everybody's talking about, that's going to be the heart and soul of this team. That's fine. I talked about it on basically a sports show. I'll bring it up quickly here. Mike Pettin was their fourth, fifth, sixth choice for head coach. Yep. That's a problem to me. That means that this is not a guy that was at the top of a lot of lists that people wanted to hire him. And I think that just spreads down from the top. If they go 4-12 again this year, I think that would be as much as you could hope for at this point. I just don't see this team as being very good. They're going to be, and just they fired the front office not even a year ago.
Right.
After a year into the
resigned.
Resigned. Yeah, whatever. But they're just not going to be
Kevin Costner tried, but they just couldn't keep him on.
Yeah, I mean he did such a great job. I can't even find that movie to watch, to rent. But
it's coming out on DVD soon.
Oh, okay. But anyway,
the NFL starts. So.
I mean, I could go on and on about the Browns, but they're not going to be good. I hope Johnny Manziel turns out to be what they hoped he would be when they drafted him, but I don't think that's going to happen. You lose Josh Gordon, and the defense might be good, but when they're on the field 75% of the time, I don't care if you're the 85 Bears, you're going to get tired, and that's going to be that. I think that the Steelers win the division. I think the rest of it's just a complete dumpster fire, and who knows.
I still stick with the Bengals just because I think they have a little bit more offensive talent than Pittsburgh does. But there's no second team coming out of this.
No.
No. We'll go from Greg's favorite team to my favorite team, who won the division last year in the AFC South. The Indianapolis Colts, also a 11-5 division winner. Here's my thing. I mean, the Colts played like one of the best teams in football for the first 6 weeks or so. When they go into San Francisco and win, they beat Denver at home. They had a couple really good wins.
Beat Seattle at home.
That's right. They beat Seattle at home. And, I mean, they had that amazing comeback against the Chiefs in the playoffs, only to then get beat up pretty badly by the Patriots the next week. They didn't make any changes. They didn't make any noticeable improvements to this team.
No.
So, I mean, in the NFL, if you're not improving, you're getting worse for the most part. And they're not going to – I mean, they had so many things go right for them, too, to get to 11-5. They're not going to be 11-5. 10-6 maybe, probably 9-7. They'll still probably win the division, but 9-7 is, I think, probably the more realistic point for the Colts right now because, I mean, Vic Ballard got hurt again, so their best running back's out. They still have Trent Richardson, so they're counting on Donald Brown to carry the load. Reggie Wayne's another year older, coming off an ACL tear.
Yeah.
You got to rely on T.Y. Hilton being your best guy, and I love T.Y. Hilton. I think he's a very good player, but I don't know if he's the one guy that you got to rely on. They're getting Dwayne Allen back at tight end, which is going to help, but they lost a little bit on defense. The offensive line still hasn't changed too much. I mean, they lost some guys, but I don't know if that's really a bad thing with some of the offensive line play they had. I was so optimistic about the Colts' chances when they start playing last year. And, maybe it has to do a little bit with how they ended the season in New England, but I kind of expected that. But at the same point, I shouldn't be expecting them to lose like they did like that in New England. I thought it would be a little bit closer. But I think they hit a high point last year, and it's all on Andrew Luck still. And if he can't will them to 11 wins on his own again, they're going to be 9-7. They're going to be a good, mediocre team.
I will tell you this about the Colts last year. They were frustrating because when they played great, and they did a few times. I mean, I still remember that San Francisco game. I don't know that I've seen a football team play as well as they did in that game in a very long time. But by the same token, they would turn around and lose games. You'd be like, what the hell is going on here with these guys? And I don't know how. I guess maybe, I think maybe they weren't as talented as I thought they were, and they just had games that just went really well for them. I agree with you. They're going to be, I don't know, 9-7. I think 10-6, probably more realistic. Maybe a break here or there. They go 11-5 again because that's another division that is not exactly the toughest, but they're just going to be, they're still a year or two away from being up there in the elite category. But I like Andrew Luck a lot. I love watching them when they're playing right. There's not a more fun team in football, but I just don't think they're going to be consistent enough to be a real serious threat to anybody this year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the rest of the division, it's not great. But I think Tennessee's better.
Yeah.
I think Houston will be better. Jacksonville is sort of better. Kind of.
They're going to be. Remember how the Cardinals used to be, where they weren't good, but they weren't always easy to beat?
Yeah.
That's kind of like I think what the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to be this year. They're not going to be good, but
sure.
you best be paying attention when you play them, I think.
Right. But that's the thing is the Colts didn't really improve the team. They also didn't get that much worse.
Right.
So they're just kind of staying pat, but I don't think this is the way this team's built. You can't stay pat. There's still holes.
Sure.
And even with the guys they have that do the jobs admirably well, they could still be a lot better.
Well, you got to hope, too. I mean, there's always a chance that maybe Trent Richardson turns out okay. I don't think it's a very good chance, but they're hurting in the running game. Reggie Wayne, as great as he is, I think he's a Hall of Fame player myself. He's a year older, coming off an ACL tear. It's just they need – I think they'd be okay if they had a little bit better stuff at the skill positions outside of Andrew Luck. And I just think that's what hurts them. Because when those guys can play above their abilities, then they're really tough, but you can't count on it. And consistency is very important in any sport, as we all know.
The other thing that they need to do is they can't waste Andrew Luck. And what I mean by that is not necessarily wasting his talents, but he gets hit a lot.
Yeah.
And part of it is because he does hold onto the ball a little too long. I do find myself a lot saying, just throw the damn ball, Andrew. But at the same point, if you want him to have a long career, and he can, and he's probably the most sturdy and most stable of all the quarterbacks of the recent drafts, the Kaepernicks, the Wilsons, the RG3s. There's a lot of people that will tell you that even though Russell Wilson won the Super Bowl last year, you would still rather have Andrew Luck than Russell Wilson.
I would.
And even though Colin Kaepernick has been explosive at times, you'd still rather have Andrew Luck. And I love the kid. He's great. But you got to keep him standing up. He can't get hit as much as he does. He has to throw the ball. He has to stop taking on linebackers when he runs it. But Andrew Luck is a solid core to any team, and they have to get better.
Right.
They have to start drafting better. You can't, no matter who it is. I hope the hell they never trade a number one overall pick again. Like they did for Trent Richardson. But
at the time, it was kind of what you're looking at the Browns, going, "What the hell did you just do?" But wow, did they really? I think for one of the rare times since they've come back as a team, they actually got the better of a deal on somebody. That was just a dumb move by the Colts, and I don't know what they saw in Trent Richardson that no one else saw, but apparently whatever it was a mirage.
Right. Moving on, we'll go on to your irrational confidence, Tennessee Titans. 7-9 last year. They get a new head coach in Ken Wisenhunt.
And I like that hire an awful lot.
Who's been known to turn quarterbacks around a little bit. If you saw when he went to Arizona, you saw what he did with Ben Roethlisberger in Pittsburgh when he first got there. And, you see what he did in San Diego last year as the offensive coordinator with Phillip Rivers. So I think if there's any team that's going to challenge the Colts, it is the Titans, and it is because it's of Ken Wisenhunt. Because Jake Locker, he's a good quarterback. He's okay. But I think Ken Wisenhunt can find a way to properly use him and the rest of what the Titans have on offense to make them a competitive and kind of dangerous team, especially in this division.
Well, I loved them last year. They were my irrational confidence pick, and they're in that exact same slot again this year. I love my boy Jake Locker. I think Ken Wisenhunt was the best hire probably of the offseason, and it's going to be interesting to see. I don't know that they're going to be a whole lot better than a 9-7 team, maybe 10 wins if a couple things go their way, but they're going to be better. And it may not translate into wins, but they're going to be a better football team across the board, and I like the direction they're headed. So if anybody, you're right, if anybody's going to challenge the Colts, it's going to be these guys. I don't see Jacksonville doing it. Houston will be better, obviously, but I don't think they're going to be better enough, especially when you're relying on Ryan Fitzpatrick. So I like my Titans to make a run at it, and maybe even, if things go the right way, maybe even win that division. My irrational confidence, Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really just relies on Ken Wisenhunt and Jake Locker if they can perform. Defense is okay, not anything.
Didn't they bring in who did they bring in as their defensive coordinator? That was I remember it was like somebody that I thought, well, this might be a good move. But anyway, yeah, they're going to be better. They're going to be fun, I think. And if anybody can get anything out of Jake Locker, it's going to be Ken Wisenhunt. So we'll see.
Yep. Third place. Last year, 4-12 was third place in this division with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I think Gus Bradley's done a good job. They brought some guys over from Seattle for defense. They're going to be better defensively. I think they should be playing Blake Bortles instead of Chad Henne.
I agree with that 100%.
Because Blake Bortles did play. He played very well in the preseason. I think I understand it, only insofar as they saw what they did to Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah, but Blaine Gabbert wasn't good to begin with.
But I think what their reasoning is, they think that they ruined him by playing him too early and having him get just slaughtered week after week like he did. And maybe they're trying to hold on to let Blake Bortles see it a little bit more and kind of get comfortable with the position and understand fully what he needs to do. Because, I mean, you didn't think out of the quarterback of last year's class that Blake Bortles would be the one that you talk about once the season comes around is, hey, this guy should be starting. Why isn't he starting? He's NFL caliber talent.
But you got to remember, two things about Blaine Gabbert versus Blake Bortles. First off, when Gabbert was coming out, no one was talking about him going, this guy has got the tools to be an NFL quarterback. People, when they drafted Gabbert, people were like, huh? With Bortles, now again, I don't know necessarily he was the best quarterback in the draft, but he was the most prototypical quarterback in the draft. And I think that's why he went as high as he did.
Yeah.
And I think he's just a better player than Gabbert, but I mean, they know they're not going to win anything, so maybe you're right. They don't want to risk Bortles out there getting killed for no reason. But he will start before the end of the season. I mean, Chad Henne, come on.
Right. I think that's the only reason why they wouldn't start him. It's just they understand that if we go with Chad Henne, we're probably going to be worse. But we want to do this just to ease him into it. And if I was a Jaguars fan, I wouldn't be happy with it because I want to be like, well, I want to win games. But in the long term,
it's a smart move.
It's smart, and I think you're right that we will see Bortles by the end of the year. And I think the Jaguars are on the right track for once.
I do. I talked about liking Gus Bradley last year. I think they're headed in the right direction. Again, they're not going to win a lot of games, but it's a team that you don't want to look at, and you don't want to fall asleep on these guys, and you don't want to not pay any attention to these guys because they've got enough to rise up and beat just about anybody. Now, will they do it every week? No, but they're certainly going to be. They're going to play hard, and like I said, you just don't want to go to sleep on them.
I mean, last year they go 3-3 or 4-12 overall. They were 3-3 in the division.
Yeah, and
that was even better than Tennessee was.
I think they even started like 0-9 last year too, if I remember right.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to be well coached. They're going to play hard. They don't have a lot of talent, but they're headed in the right direction. And I like Gus Bradley a lot. Now I might be crazy, but I think he's going to be a good coach in this league.
I do too. I like what he's done there. And rounding out the division at the bottom, last year was the Houston Texans. They started out 2-0. They finished 2-14. I mean, you remember the opening night game, the second half of the Monday night game, and they just blew out the Chargers at home. on Monday night in the first week, and we all thought, oh well, now the Texans are gonna be just as good as they have been in the past. But then Matt Schaub decided that his favorite receiver was the cornerbacks on the other team.
Right, whoever was on the other team, that's who he liked the best, yeah.
I don't know how many pick sixes he actually threw last year, but I think he threw one in 6 consecutive games. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and he set the record for most pick sixes last year, too.
Okay.
So it was a bunch. I don't know how many it was either, but it was a lot. It was enough to break a record.
Now, Gary Kubiak's gone because he had a stroke in the middle of a game.
I mean, that's not funny, but, you know.
No, but it's like, you got to feel bad for firing a guy. Like, yeah, you almost died on the field, but we got to let you go.
Well, and how much worse could it be for the Texans at that point, right?
Right. Bill O'Brien comes in. He was the coach at Penn State last year, quarterback's coach with the Patriots before that. And I have a question for you, Greg. Because I didn't even know this until today. Who is the starting quarterback for the Houston Texans? Without looking it up, do you know it off the top of your head?
Ryan Fitzpatrick.
You actually knew that?
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Until today.
I don't understand it, but that's who it is.
Ryan Fitzpatrick's the starter. Their backup, they traded for Ryan Mallett from New England.
Who I think you will see eventually take over that offense.
I think so, too. Because I think the thing there, too, is Bill O'Brien knows the Patriots. He knows the Patriots quarterbacks.
Right.
I didn't even know that Ryan Fitzpatrick was still playing. I thought he was one of those quarterbacks that had that kind of that burst that you see him like, oh wow, he's there, and then he just goes away.
Well, you know, we like to make fun of Matt Flynn and how he took one game and wrote it to a whole bunch of money.
Yeah.
Ryan Fitzpatrick took 5 games with the Bills, and man, did he cash in, because he has not done jack since then. I mean, at least Matt Flynn came back and won a game for the Packers last year. You know, but Ryan Fitzpatrick, he took 5 games, I think from 2-3 years ago, where he played pretty well for the Bills. The Bills were like, hey, we got to pay this guy to give him all this money.
Ryan Fitzmagic.
Yeah, exactly.
I remember.
But yeah, I think he's keeping the seat warm for Ryan Mallett.
Yeah, it's offensively. I mean, DeAndre Hopkins is good. Andre Johnson's on his way out. You don't know if Arian Foster's going to be healthy for a full year ever again.
Right.
And I think they lost Ben Tate.
Yeah, he's with the Browns now.
Right.
Yeah.
So offensively, it's a work in progress. But defensively, oh.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, you got J.J. Watt already.
Yeah.
You had a very good defense.
Oh, yeah. By the way, folks, Jadeveon Clowney, that wasn't just a one-play thing. It turns out he's actually pretty good.
Yeah. So Jadeveon Clowney comes in to only bolster that defense more. And I think, like the Jaguars, they're a team, like, really, I mean, as we say that the AFC South is bad, they're full of teams that, yes, they may not win a whole ton of games, but you can't overlook any of those games. Because if you fall asleep, Houston's defense will crush you, and maybe Ryan Fitzpatrick, or if it's Ryan Mallett later in the year, they could work enough points out to all of a sudden you look up at the scoreboard at the end of the game like, oh, we lost.
You know,
that happened?
I would like the Texans a lot better if they were more settled at the quarterback position. I think they would be poised to make a nice comeback after that disaster of last year. But Ryan Fitzpatrick, really, he was the best thing you could find.
Yeah, I mean, you would have almost said they should have just kept Matt Schaub.
Yeah.
Instead of trading him away. I mean, and they let go of Case Keenum, too.
Yeah.
Played okay for him. And, I mean, TJ Yates, who he played a playoff game.
Yeah.
Didn't he win that playoff game, too?
I don't remember if he did or not.
I think they played the Bengals and they beat them, I think.
Well, if it was the Bengals, of course they won. But, yeah. I mean, you know, they're going to be a lot better than they were at 2-14 last year, but I don't know that they're going to be back to where they were before they went 2-14.
No, maybe I think 5-11 probably is where I could put them.
If by some miracle Ryan Fitzpatrick captures what he did for 5 games in Buffalo again, or if Ryan Mallett turns out to be the quarterback that people think he potentially could be, I could see these guys making a run at 7-8 win season. But until then, I'm with you. Probably 5-11, 6-10, somewhere in there. Better than last year, but not. But that defense is going to be. Oh my God, is it going to be tough?
I was listening to Grantland's NFL podcast, and they were talking about the Texans, and one of their guys, maybe both of them, thought that the Texans could win 8-9 games this year.
If things go the right way, I mean, if Arian Foster discovers the fountain of youth, if Johnson plays well,
it's got to be Arian Foster, and I mean, they were hoping that Ryan Fitzpatrick could be decent, and I don't see it.
You got DeAndre Hopkins, who showed flashes. I mean, we talk about it. I mean, it's probably one of the most overused things in all of football talk. If everything goes the right way, this could happen. This is a real case of that, where if a gazillion things go right, they could. But, they need a gazillion things to go right. They're up to like number 22 right now. There's a long way to go to get to that. All the things going right to win 8 or 9, yeah.
Yeah. But, I mean, looking at the whole division, I still think the Colts are the most talented team in the division.
I agree, yeah.
They still win it. But I could see a scenario where Tennessee, maybe Houston, but definitely Tennessee could work their way into wildcard discussions and maybe get one of those wildcard teams because, again, with the rest of the AFC, somebody has to make the playoffs.
Right, and you look at, again, the Broncos are going to be there.
Right, you have the 4 division winners and San Diego.
Right, sure. And the rest of it,
one more spot to fight between.
Here's
a lot of mediocre teams.
Here's a question: do you think that Miami is significantly better than Tennessee?
No,
I don't. The Jets certainly aren't. The Bills certainly aren't. No one out of the AFC's north. No,
Ravens,
yeah.
No.
Maybe the Steelers. I mean, I could see like a Steelers team. If the Cincinnati wins the division, I can see the Steelers popping up at 9-7 and making a run at it. But really,
it's going to be just like this last year, where you had a situation where you had the 4 teams and then the 1 11-win team, and then everybody else that was 7-9, 8-8. They were fighting for it and hoping the tiebreakers broke the right way.
Yeah, duking it out to back their way into the playoffs. Yeah.
Yep. And it's not going to be any different. But Indianapolis, class of the AFC South, still. Last division here for us. Probably another easy one to get through.
Yeah.
The AFC East. The winner, of course, of last year was the New England Patriots, 12-4. Got a bye, beat Indy at home pretty easily, and then lost pretty easily to Denver in the AFC title game. They're the Patriots. They're the same as they always are. The rest of the division isn't getting any better any quicker, despite all their crazy attempts like the Jets do or the Dolphins are attempting. But Tom Brady just keeps chugging along.
Tom Brady, and they added Darrelle Revis this year, so they're going to be. They're kind of like the Broncos. They're a cut above everybody else in this division. They're going to win it. Probably another 12-4 season. They're the Patriots, and you've made a couple of comparisons with the Spurs. I think that these guys are kind of like the San Antonio Spurs in the respect that they're always good.
Yes.
And they're going to stay good. Now, whether they're Super Bowl caliber good, I think they could be. Whether they are or not will all depend on the Broncos. But, yeah, they're easily the winner of this division. No problem at all. They've got, lots of talent. Gronkowski's going to be back this year. You've got, what's his name, the running back's pretty good, Shane Vereen. Tom Brady, Darrelle Revis in your defensive secondary. So, yeah, they're going to be tough.
Whole cast of no-name wide receivers.
Yeah.
I think the only interesting move, outside of Revis, that the Patriots made, they traded away Logan Mankins to Tampa Bay, and apparently that was a move that Tom Brady was not very happy with. And it was another situation where the Patriots don't like to pay people when they want to be paid.
Yeah.
See Wes Welker leaving, for example. And Logan Mankins has been a guard in New England for a long, long time. And, it's something that, Tom Brady, a couple of years ago, he restructured his deal so that the Patriots could continue to run the way they do and pay guys at low rates.
Yeah, and then they don't pay guys, and they keep sending them away.
Right. And you got to think, Tom Brady's probably a little frustrated because you look at his, like I mentioned, a bunch of no-name receivers. He has no one to throw to. He's got Gronk, and Vereen's decent coming out of the backfield. And he makes do with what he has, but you think of the Patriots teams of years ago when they would go buy Randy Moss, or they would have these talent at every position, and they were just running roughshod over everyone to the way the Patriots do business now, and they choose not to spend money. And yeah, sure, it's financially successful for the team and for the Patriots organization and everything that Robert Kraft's trying to do. But you got to think at some point you can't piss off Tom Brady too far.
Well, but the argument could be made too. At his age, at this point in his career, where's he going to go?
I mean, anyone. I mean, if you.
I mean, it's not smart to piss him off. I agree, but.
I mean, you see a situation where the Colts eventually let go of Peyton Manning,
right?
And he goes to Denver and successful. I see no reason why Tom Brady couldn't do the same thing with
Joe Montana did it.
Yeah,
at about the same age. Yeah, so
Joe Montana's done it. Johnny Unitas did it.
I mean, with the Patriots and the money thing, I mean, it's kind of a Steelers move because the Steelers are that way too. They don't like to pay people either. They'll just draft somebody to replace the guy, but they don't have Tom Brady back there, and I guess they do have the Super Bowl rings to go along with it, but I don't know. It's an interesting approach, but when he restructured his deal and they still don't pay anybody, that's not right. That's just not cool.
Well, the other thing that people seem to forget about the Patriots, they have not won anything in 10 years.
Nope. Not at all.
I mean, the last time they won was what?
2007?
That's 2006? 2007?
Was it 7? Yeah, I don't even know. It's been a while.
I think it was 2006. But I mean, they're always 12-4, like we mentioned.
Right.
They're always they win the division every single year. They're in the AFC title game every other year, but they still haven't won anything. And yeah, Tom Brady's great and all that, but he won those 3 Super Bowls in his first 4 years on the job?
Something like that, because they won 3 out of 4, right? Yeah.
Right, I mean, I might be coming at this from a different direction because I'm a Peyton Manning apologist, but people always held that over Peyton Manning, that, oh yeah, you can't win anything. Tom Brady hasn't exactly been winning anything either. Yes, he got the 3 championships.
Well, now wait a minute. Let's so wait a minute. So they won 3 out of 4. So the first one was in 2001, and then in 2003 and 2000. So no, it's been 10 years since they won. It was 2004 was the last time they won a Super Bowl. Right?
I'm looking it up because I need to know this for my own.
It's 2004. They've been there twice since. They lost to the Giants both times, but they haven't won one since 2004, I think.
Right. Yeah, you're 2004. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so exactly 10 years now since they won a title last. And you had a perfect regular season. And yeah, you were 18-0 going to the Super Bowl.
And you lost.
Peyton Manning was 14-0 several times. He was 13-0 several times. And people always held it over him. Well, you haven't won a Super Bowl. And finally, I think Tom Brady and the Patriots have run into a situation where, yes, your quarterback, if he's one of the best in the game, and I won't deny that Tom Brady is, he could single-handedly win you 10 games a season. And maybe you could pile on a couple others from other ways. But you need to have a full team to win a championship.
Exactly. And
the Patriots, because of their spending, have taken away the talent at other positions, and they're slow. I mean, they're 12-4 last year. I think it was 2 years ago when they only won like 10 games.
Yeah.
But I could see a situation where, despite the rest of it's going to be hard to do because the rest of the conference is so bad, like we mentioned. But I could see a situation where the Patriots only win like 10 games.
Well,
they're not as good as they have been, and then maybe the next year they finally get a scare, and maybe they lose the division next year or in 2 years.
Well, a lot of people think that Miami's actually poised to maybe win that division this year. I'm not ready.
I don't think that.
I'm not ready to go that far myself. But going back to the Super Bowls for a second, okay, the whole Brady versus Manning argument. Okay, they're still resting on the laurels of Super Bowls they won 10 years ago.
Exactly.
That's kind of like saying, okay, let's say that you're the 49ers in 1998 going, well, we won 4 Super Bowls in the 80s. It's like, yeah, but that was 10 years ago,
Yeah.
I mean,
it's not even a situation where
or like the Cowboys. 10 years ago, you could have said the same thing about the Cowboys. We won 3 Super Bowls in 4 years, 10 years ago.
Or you look at Joe Montana, and he was, 4-0 in Super Bowls?
Yep.
And Tom Brady, he's now 3-2.
3-2, yeah. I mean,
if he loses the next one, he's going to be an even 3-3.
I mean, I don't. Yeah,
you got but yeah, sure, you got to 5 Super Bowls, great, but you still lost a couple.
Yeah, well,
Peyton Manning is 1-2 in Super Bowls.
Well, John Elway was 2-3 in Super Bowls. But everybody remembers him now as this great champion quarterback. But
right,
he got there.
The championships will carry you.
Yeah, but
when Tom Brady's career is done, we'll still talk about that. But in the here and now,
yeah,
they haven't won in 10 years.
No, and that's the thing. You're kind of resting on laurels from a different era at this point. You really are. I mean, 10 years ago, the league's completely turned over for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, part of that you could blame on the rest of the division. I mean, the Jets had those couple years with Mark Sanchez and a really good defense.
Yeah,
but they weren't ever threats.
No,
I can't remember the last time Miami was good. Chad Pennington.
Oh, wow. It's been, I mean, where they were really, like, serious contender good, it's been since the 80s, I would think.
Well, since they were serious contenders, but I think the last time they made the playoffs was with Chad Pennington.
That sounds about right, yeah. And the Bills, what have they been to the playoffs maybe twice since the Super Bowl run?
Yeah. You know, the rest of the division is bad. They don't have, I mean, you have Tom Brady, so you're going to win at the very least 9 games.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're basically handing them 5 or 6 wins a year just in being in that division alone.
Right. And so they always get the high records. They always get they usually get a bye. And sometimes they get lucky with the weather in New England when they host a title game. But, you know, even in the AFC title games of late, they lost to Baltimore the last time they played in one.
Yeah. Well,
and then Baltimore went on to win the Super Bowl. But
then there was that year that Baltimore, I don't think it was that Baltimore didn't make the Super Bowl that year, but they came in the first round and just beat the daylights out of New England.
Right. Ray Rice ran for like 224 yards.
Exactly.
Something like that. Yeah.
So, and I'm not taking anything away from Brady or his 3 Super Bowl wins.
No, of course. He's still the top 2 quarterback.
But the Patriots, at this point in the game, I mean, you're right. They win a lot, but it doesn't seem to they can't cash it in for anything. And I'd even go as far as to say this: if they are the great team for all these years that people say they were, great teams don't lose to those 2 Giants teams that they lost to. That you just don't.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a 9-7 Giants team, and I can't. Were they 9-7 both times? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, come on. You know. But anyway, so yeah, they're going to win the division because Miami is. I'm not even so sure they're as good. Probably about as good as Tennessee. Probably, maybe a little bit better.
Yeah, I think Miami's probably the the second best team in that division. I think Tannehill is going to be better.
Yeah. He's better. You know, he's a better quarterback than we think he is, I think. Not to say he's great or anything, but I think he's a little better than we perceive him to be.
Yeah, I think they need a little bit. I think they need another wide receiver and some help on defense, but they're slowly improving.
Right.
I don't think they take that leap this year. I could see it next year.
Sure, if everything goes right.
And they were one of those. God, how many? There was 4 8-8 teams. Tennessee was 7-9, and San Diego was 9-7. So there were 6 teams.
Yeah.
In that wild card range.
Yeah. Well, you remember the Dolphins had their destiny in their own hands and blew it. All they had to do was I forget what it was real easy, and they couldn't.
They
pull
just
it
had
off.
to win like the last 2 games, I think.
Yeah, and I think Buffalo was one of those games, and
Buffalo was still in it late in the year. Yeah,
but I think they lost to Buffalo and the Jets, if memory serves, in the last 2 games, and it's like if you can't cash in that ticket, forget it.
Right. So hopefully they got some experience from last year and realized that, hey, you need to win the games to
exactly.
Get there. The Jets are always interesting at the very least. They have Michael Vick. They have Geno Smith. Still got Rex Ryan.
I think they got
Eric Decker.
A defense that's pretty solid.
Yeah, Rex Ryan is going to make a defense that's pretty decent.
But I just, Michael Vick, I suppose if you can keep him upright long enough.
I don't even know if Vick is starting. I think Geno Smith is starting.
Okay.
And I think Vick is the backup.
I still like their chances better if you can keep Michael Vick standing up. But,
yeah.
I mean, Geno, I don't know. You know, they're going to be about like what they were last year, maybe a little worse. I doubt they'll be any better.
Yeah, I mean, they were 8-8.
Yeah.
Could they get to 9-7?
I have to see their schedule.
Geno Smith would have to do something special. I see them being more 6-10.
Yeah, I think that they regress away from 8-8.
Maybe 7-9. Because I think the Jets are always a team that's in the same vein as the Cowboys too.
Yeah.
Where they make a lot of noise, they try to say that they're switching it up, and then they end up kind of where you left them. So.
Right.
And then Buffalo, I like what Buffalo's building, but they're still missing a lot. I mean, E.J. Manuel, I like him, but I think he needs to prove a little bit more. Right. Sammy Watkins is going to be a pretty good receiver.
Yeah.
The running backs are always up and down, C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson. I mean, they won a couple games they shouldn't have won last year. They were 6-10. I mean, they were still – I remember they were we were looking at the playoff scenarios as the weeks winded down.
Yeah.
And they kept listing Buffalo in these scenarios. And I'm like, Buffalo really is still in the playoff race, aren't they?
Yeah, that was a real testament to how bad the AFC was after the Broncos and Patriots last year.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's another one of those cases where if things broke right for Buffalo, maybe they're still in late playoff contention.
Sure.
But I think Buffalo's a little bit more concerned about staying in Buffalo than they are winning about games at this point.
Yeah, I guess they're kind of headed the right direction, but if a really, really good season with them would be 9-7. I just think they're they're one of those teams. We talked about I forget who we brought up that said the Colts basically stayed the same. I think you can say the same kind of about the Bills. They really didn't do a whole lot to get terribly excited about.
Yeah, I mean I like Sammy Watkins.
I do too, but I don't know. You still got to have somebody that can get him the ball. And I don't think AJ Manuel's there yet.
Manuel was good for the first couple games he played.
Yeah.
And then he got injured, and then he wasn't consistent when he finally got back. And so who knows, a full offseason to refresh, and maybe the Bills have a little spark, and they could be 8-8 just like everybody else.
Right, exactly.
But, again, the Patriots win that division easily, and Miami might make a playoff run, maybe.
Right. I think if just going through the AFC really quick, we've got the Broncos, Patriots definitely going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah,
San Diego Colts are going to win the division. The Chargers.
San Diego's going to be the other wild card.
And then I think you're going to see a battle between Tennessee, Miami, and
Pittsburgh and Cincinnati.
Pittsburgh and maybe Cincinnati to battle it out for that other one. Yeah.
Yeah. Because either Pittsburgh or Cincinnati wins the North, so that's another spot. So
right,
yeah, there's just not a whole lot once you get past Broncos, Patriots, and I'd put the Chargers probably in that talk because if they got hot, they could knock off either of those teams if they peaked at the right time.
Yeah, they're definitely the class of the rest of the AFC.
All right. So I mean, we've gone through all the divisions. Let's. You want to make some playoff predictions?
Well, yeah. Let's see.
Early playoff predictions.
We were 50% right last year. Let's try it again this year and see how we do.
All right. I think in the NFC, I mean the Seahawks are good. They're very good.
Yep.
I don't think I'm going to pick them.
Okay.
I'm going to go with the New Orleans Saints.
Ah. You took my pick away from me.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, because I'm with you.
I was waffling between New Orleans and Green Bay.
I tell you, it's again, I just can't get past the fact that it's just so hard to repeat. Because if it wasn't for that, I probably would go with the Seahawks again. But I like the Saints. I don't know. I liked them a lot last year. I like them even more this year. I'm with you. I think the Saints win the NFC this year.
Right. And I got to think that I think the Saints, to do that, they're going to have the best record in the NFC.
Yeah.
They're going to have to host Seattle, and they're going to have to beat them in the Superdome. I think that's how that road is probably going to have to go. One way or the other, whoever wins the NFC is going to have to beat Seattle.
Right.
Whether it's Green Bay at home, and it has to be at home. I don't know if any of these teams could go into Seattle and beat them. Maybe Green Bay could. If Green Bay is completely healthy, they could weather the noise and whatever.
Well, they came close in the Hail Mary game.
Right.
They played them tough there, so it's possible. But we'll
see how they open up on Thursday.
Yeah.
Even though that's going to mean nothing in 4 months.
Because what's going to happen after week one is we're all going to overreact to a bunch of stuff that means nothing. But that's okay. That's what we're here for. But if of the teams, the contenders, the teams that I like that have a chance to beat Seattle in Seattle, maybe the Packers.
Right. New Orleans is going to win in Seattle.
New Orleans isn't going to be able to pull it off.
They've showed that already.
But I'm with you. I like the Saints as the Super Bowl representative out of the NFC this year.
And then in the AFC, I don't know if you can pick any different than last year. I think it's got to be Denver until something else happens.
I agree. Peyton Manning in total FU mode. I'll tell you what, if it does turn out to be the Saints and the Broncos in the Super Bowl, where are they playing it this year?
49. Oh, Arizona.
It's
in a dome.
It's going to be That's going to be one of the most entertaining Super Bowls we've ever seen if it comes to fruition.
The amount of points.
Saints 49ers will be Saints Broncos will be a wild one.
Peyton can get revenge for Super Bowl. What was that? 43.
Yep.
God, I still can't believe they lost that stupid game. Stupid halftime. Second half onside kick. Who Who does that?
Yeah, but what a great looking uniform matchup, though. Come on,
that would be nice. Well, I don't know.
Well, actually, the best Super Bowl uniform matchup ever was Bears Colts. But anyway,
and then the winner, I picked him last year. I got to pick him again. I got to say, my boy Peyton puts another shiny silver dot on his career.
Boy, that's tough. Well, just because it would be no fun if we both picked the same team, I'm going to say Drew Brees picks up that second Super Bowl ring this year.
If Drew Brees beat Peyton Manning twice.
Well.
And then all the years that San Diego kept knocking the Colts out of the playoffs, too, would be Drew Brees' fault that Peyton Manning doesn't have like 3 or 4 Super Bowls.
Well, so we picked. Okay, so who do we like in the playoffs? Because the Super Bowl's kind of easy. Let's pick playoff teams. Okay, we've obviously got the Saints and the Broncos. Who else?
Okay, in the NFC, Philly.
Yeah, definitely. Green Bay.
New Orleans, Seattle, San Francisco, and Chicago.
Okay, I'm going to go with, in the West, we'll take the Seahawks, the North, the Packers, East, obviously the Eagles, South, Saints, obviously, and then we got 2 wild cards, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna go off the board here. I'm going to say the Chicago Bears are your first, one of your wild cards, and the second wild card is going to be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There you go. The 49ers don't make the playoffs this season. That's my bold prediction for the NFC.
And if the Bears don't make it, it's either the Bears or the Giants. I think the Giants work their way into.
That's a nice bold pick. I like that.
Yeah, I like Eli and the Giants to have a bounce back here. Okay. Make the playoffs at the very least. They'll probably lose, but I can see them making the playoffs.
I don't know. Once they get in, anything can happen. They've shown that.
God, they've done it before, especially as a 6th seed. I think they won both the Super Bowls as 6 seeds.
That sounds about right. Well, if that happens, we do have the ever so slight chance of the Manning versus Manning Super Bowl.
Oh yeah, the one that they predicted forever.
Which, could you imagine? Oh my God, the media coverage would be.
I mean, you thought the Hard Bowl was
right.
Bad.
Exactly. That's nothing compared to what this would be. Okay, so let's go over to the AFC.
In the AFC, let's see, New England, Cincinnati, Indianapolis, and Denver, the same division winners as last year. Boring, but that's what it is in this division. San Diego, and then I'm going to go with. I think I know who you're going to go with. I'm going to go with Miami.
Okay.
Miami, because I don't like Pittsburgh.
I don't either.
And I don't have the same kind of irrational confidence as you probably do in your other playoff team.
Okay, well, so obviously it's the Broncos in the West, all right? In the South, it's going to be the Colts.
Yep.
In the East, clearly the Patriots. The Central, I'm taking the Steelers to win the division. My playoff teams are obviously the San Diego Chargers, and yes, you guessed it, my irrational confidence, Tennessee Titans make up the final wild card spot in the AFC.
It'll be interesting if Pittsburgh can go back and win the Central, because that doesn't exist anymore.
Or, excuse me, the North. Old habits die hard, man. What can I say? It was the AFC Central for most of my life, so.
I know, and the Colts should really be in that division, and Baltimore should probably be in the South. But
and really, though, I mean, wouldn't it really be quite the accomplishment if Pittsburgh did win the AFC Central this year?
It would be something.
That would be newsworthy.
They won their own division. But yeah, that's our NFL preview extravaganza. Week 1 in college football, not anything terribly out of whack, but there were a few big games with a few big scores, and then some movement in the rankings. We'll start with the very first day of college football on Thursday. Arizona State, number 19, they blew out Weber State, big deal. Ole Miss blew out Boise State. But the other blowout that no one, I think, saw coming, Texas A&M, number 21, goes into South Carolina, who's preseason ranked number 9, and without Johnny Manziel, they put in Kenny Hill. Who's Kenny Hill? Just some guy that threw for the most yards in Texas A&M history in a 52-28 blowout of the Gamecocks in Columbia.
Don't let that final score fool you. It was never even that close. Didn't he break something like 5 of Manziel's records in that game?
Yes, he did. Kenny football in to take it. I don't know if this points out how good Texas A&M is or how stupid the preseason polls are.
Probably a little of both.
Yeah. I think everyone just kind of expected Texas A&M to just fall back a little bit. But I think something I heard that was interesting is that Kenny Smith actually fits into Texas A&M's system better than Johnny Manziel ever did.
Well,
because Manziel is a freelancer for the most part.
Right.
He breaks plays. He can extend it and do something crazy. Kenny Smith runs the offense as it's supposed to run, and you get a situation like you had on Thursday where everything's just clicking and they connect, and they move up in the rankings from 21 up to number 9 in the AP poll. Basically
flip places with South Carolina.
Right. They get 2 first-place votes in the poll, and South Carolina does go all the way down to number 21. So interesting little wrinkle right there in the rankings.
If Kenny Hill's a better fit for that offense, it was pretty apparent by the way he played against the Gamecocks. I don't know if I'm surprised that South Carolina lost. I'm just surprised that they got blown out at home like that.
Yeah. I could have seen Texas A&M going in there and winning a tight game.
Right.
But for South Carolina to just be blown out and laid down like they did, that's just...
Yeah.
I don't know if that speaks well of A&M or worse on South Carolina, but...
Well, with the preseason rankings, you never know.
Yeah.
I mean, you know there's a few
But usually
teams...
they have them pegged pretty decently, not in such a way where they're this wrong, where 21 is actually 9 and 9 is actually 21.
But they do miss big on a team or two every year, and I don't know if South Carolina's that team this year, but I don't think anyone expected that.
Yeah.
It was just.
I think we might have just been giving South Carolina the benefit of the doubt.
Pretty much, yeah.
And then putting A&M down because we didn't know what Kenny Hill was, and now you know.
Yeah,
and who knows?
So far, so good.
Who knows? Maybe this is a flash in the pan and they lose next week. But
I don't know. I mean, South Carolina, it's an SEC team. They're pretty good. They're not.
Sorry. A&M's not going to lose next week. They're playing Lamar. It'll be okay.
Well, if they do lose next week, that'll be the lead story on our segment next week.
I think South Carolina plays Georgia.
Let's see.
South Carolina plays East Carolina.
East Carolina's, that's a tough football team.
Yeah. They're 1-0. Elsewhere on that Friday, Michigan State blows out Jacksonville State. Big deal. USC blows out Fresno. Number 1 Florida State in what ultimately was a very tight game in Cowboy Stadium against Oklahoma State. I didn't get a chance to watch this game. I was out and busy, but you saw it, Greg. It was tight all the way through.
It was a good game. I will say this. I think that, first off, if people are – and there might be some out there that are panicking a little bit like, oh, my God, Florida State's not as good. First off, Oklahoma State is not a cupcake. If you remember, this was a team that was, 2-3 years ago was in the national championship conversation. But Jameis Winston starting out early in that game, he didn't look sharp, but obviously things picked up. And Florida State, it was a close game. Oklahoma State played them really tough, but I think Florida State kind of established that, yes, they are as good as people think they are in that game. Mm-hmm. They pulled it out. It was a really good game, and wow, it was fun to watch.
Yeah, Alabama played West Virginia in the Georgia Dome, and people were upset because Alabama only beat West Virginia by 10 points, 33-23. Alabama, they were trying to figure out a new quarterback. Sims is the quarterback there now. Stayed in through the entire game for the Crimson Tide. And I don't know, maybe it's just them trying to get their bearings, but maybe Alabama finally takes a little step back.
Well,
it's hard to tell.
I'm more troubled.
It's hard to tell off one game.
I'm more troubled by how many points they gave up to West Virginia,
right,
than I am about the quarterback situation. I don't think anybody thought Sims was going to be the guy that would win this job, were they?
No.
Who's the backup? I can't think.
The
of
other
his
one
name.
was Coker. He was the guy that transferred from
right. Yeah,
LSU.
But I think that's my biggest surprise with this. But I don't know how good West Virginia is going to be this year. I wasn't expecting a lot out of them, but. Again, just like with the Florida State-Oklahoma State game, I think Alabama's going to be fine. I wouldn't put a whole lot of stock into it. But, it was surprising because I thought they would have no trouble with West Virginia, and West Virginia gave them a bit of a game.
Yeah. Oregon with a blowout. Oklahoma with a blowout. Number 5, or used to be number 5, Ohio State. They had trouble with Navy.
Yeah.
Navy was leading for a little bit there of that game, and the JT Barrett and the Buckeyes were kind of struggling to find their way, and they eventually found it late in the game to pull away from Navy as they should normally. But were you concerned? I mean, you were concerned for Ohio State in the first place, but were they raised with the way that they were playing, at least in that first half?
Yes and no. No, because I know how much trouble they have with that triple option offense that Navy runs. Navy came into Columbus, I think it was 2 years ago, and almost won there. I will say this. What won the Buckeyes this game was their depth. I just don't think Navy had the depth to hang with them for 4 quarters, and that's the big difference.
That's the problem with all the service academies.
Right,
they
exactly.
can't hang with the big boys on a long-term basis like that because of how they recruit and the guys that get in there and stuff like that. But
we talked about it on the college football preview show that I don't think either one of us thought Ohio State deserved to be ranked number 5. I'm not so sure they deserve to be ranked number 8 at this point, but that's where they are.
Yeah, Ohio State does fall down to number 8, and I just like I had said, even if they won, they were going to fall down because those rankings came out before the Braxton Miller injury.
Right.
And Oklahoma or Ohio State, they're gonna fall. It's gonna happen. They're gonna lose a game at some point. They're not gonna go undefeated. I don't think.
No, they're probably you're looking at probably 10-2 this year. I don't think they beat Michigan State. Somebody else is going to knock them off. They've got Virginia Tech this week, which is going to be a test for them. And that's okay by me. I mean, I'm fine with that. 10-2 is a very good season, and I know a lot of college football fans would love to have their team look at a 10-2 season as a disappointment. So but yeah, they're not going to be in the playoff hunt for long, and it's going to be not a long season, but they're not going to win anything this year, I don't think.
Yep. Auburn with a decent win over Arkansas, and then number 7 UCLA. Oh, national championship contender UCLA. Brent Hundley, Heisman candidate quarterback. UCLA scored 1 offensive touchdown against Virginia.
Yeah.
They did get 3 defensive touchdowns, and
right.
that's a credit to the defense. And Jim Moore is more known for his defense, and that's fine and well. But I watched the entirety of that game. Brent Hundley's not a Heisman candidate.
Did you see were they the number? What were they ranked going in, number 7?
7?
Were they the number 7 team in the country?
No,
we knew that last week.
Now Virginia's defense played awesome. They played very well, and their offense started to get it going. If they could have just clicked a little bit more, they had some big possessions where they just dropped passes, and Virginia had the opportunity to knock them off, and boy, would that have made me happy.
Well,
but UCLA, guess what, guys? They're not number 7. I mean, they moved down to number 11. That's probably a little bit more realistic. And if UCLA plays like that, they're not going to go undefeated.
No.
They're not going to win the Pac-10.
Well,
Pac-12.
you can't count on 3 touchdowns from your defense every week.
No.
You're lucky to get that once a season, and you're really lucky to get it then. No,
and sure, the offense looked a little disjointed, but even when they looked good, they still weren't that great. And what I saw was what I've seen from Brett Hundley in his whole career. He's a good quarterback. He's fine. He's not a Heisman contender.
Well,
this isn't a national championship team.
No.
And so some of the people said, well, you got to be able to win even when you don't play your best. And and this just shows that the defense can carry them some days. You can spin it however the way you want. What I saw was not a Heisman candidate and not a national championship contender.
No, and we just talked a couple minutes ago about the South Carolina-Texas A&M game and how that sometimes the polls just miss on a team. And I think UCLA is a team they missed on. I'm not so sure that I even like them at number 11. At this point, they're going to be okay. They're going to be good. They're going to be a lot like Ohio State. They're going to be a good 9, maybe 10 win team, but they are not in the national championship picture. I'm sorry.
No, I mean if that performance is what you're going to see from UCLA for the rest of the season, they're not going to beat Oregon. They're not going to beat Stanford. They're not going to beat USC. They may not even beat Arizona State. They could be if that's the way they choose to play for the rest of the season, they could be in more trouble than even I could have predicted for them.
Well, again, you take the 21 points by your defense, you take that away, and they get they lose what 20-7.
Mm-hmm. I mean, in a game where you get 20 points from your defense against Virginia, who's okay, they're not good, they're okay. In a game where you get 21 points from your defense, that's a game you should win in a blowout.
Absolutely.
Just not even a question.
Especially if you're the number 7 team in the country with the Heisman Trophy candidate at quarterback. That's a game that should have never been close.
Yep. Stanford with a blowout. Georgia beats Clemson handily. Probably what you thought was going to happen. But the real story there is just Todd Gurley.
Wow.
Amazing game. 3 rushing touchdowns and a kickoff return. I mean, I saw at least the highlights, everybody, and I saw a lot of the games. after 1 week of football, he's your Heisman Trophy.
I was just going to say the same thing. There's your guy.
Yeah, it's just nobody had an impact like he did in that game. And that's what Georgia's going to need to win a lot of these games, and if they're going to have a chance to make a run there in the SEC. But
well, somebody, I don't remember who was calling that game, but somebody brought it up and said that it seemed like Todd Gurley's been at Georgia for like 6 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's got to be a senior this year, right?
Yes. Okay. I believe so. And of course, with the win, Georgia moves up to number 6. And hell, they got 2 first-place votes for their troubles.
Yeah. Well, look at the top 7 right now. You've got 1, 2, 3 SEC teams already.
Yep.
And a 4th one at number 9, looking to get in.
Yeah. Moving on down the rankings, another ranked matchup with Wisconsin and LSU. Wisconsin looked like they might just get a victory for the Big Ten.
Yeah.
But then they remembered, oh, wait, we're the Big Ten and they're the SEC. And LSU came from behind and got that win, 28-24.
Well, they remembered one other thing, too. We're the Big Ten, and if we have a lead with 39 minutes to go in the game, we sit on it. And that's what killed them. Because I really do think if they had continued to play with the same aggressiveness they had played throughout the game up to the point where they decided we're just going to run the ball 3 times and run the clock out with, 8 minutes to go in the third quarter, I think they might have had a shot to win this game, but they just gave all the momentum to LSU, and that was it. It was over.
Yeah, LSU, normally a team that comes back from a 17-point deficit, you don't put them at the top of your rankings, but somebody gave them a first-place vote.
Yeah, I'm not so big on that. I mean, you were down to Wisconsin. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, they move up from 13 to 12, but,
I wonder who that. You don't think Les Miles did that, do you?
Well, that's the AP, not the coaches.
Oh, sorry. Okay, never mind. My bad.
They didn't get a vote in the coaches poll. Georgia got a first place vote in the coaches poll.
Whoever writes for the Baton Rouge, whatever it is, that's who gave them that vote.
Yeah. Notre Dame beats Rice at home. Big deal.
Yeah. Still overranked at 16.
Yeah. Kansas State with a blowout. Nebraska with a blowout. North Carolina with a blowout. Missouri with a blowout. And Washington with a 17-16 win at Hawaii. They drop out of the rankings. And deservedly so. Moving into the rankings, at number 25, Louisville. They crushed Miami at home last night.
Yes, they did.
And the Bobby Petrino era looks like it's alive and well there for Louisville. But that's the first week. Look at the rankings here.
Well, real
Florida
quick
State,
before we move
Alabama,
on from the Louisville-Miami game. So you saw Miami's uniforms on the field. Any different opinion?
No.
Okay.
No, but the thing actually reminded me, because the thing I wanted to point out was Louisville's uniforms.
Ooh.
The all black. I forgot who was playing on Monday. Okay. And I went out to dinner, and they had some TVs at the bar area with the game on. From far away. And I looked up, and I didn't even care who the teams were. I was like, it's a night game on ESPN, and someone's wearing all black. That could be one of 150 teams.
Right.
Look, I understand teams have their black alternates and their gray alternates and whatever, but we're on a nationally televised game. The nationally televised night game blackout has been done too many times. Switch it up.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And another thing, too, that I don't know why college teams aren't figuring this out, but when you've gotten to the point where guys like us can look at a game and not know who's playing, you've really lost your brand at that point.
Right.
I mean,
normally someone says, well, you see the scoreboard. I was sitting too far away to actually read who was on the screen. I just saw a black team versus green and white team.
Yeah.
So
it's tired. It's been tired for years.
It's so done.
Yeah.
We've been doing blackouts for like 20 years now.
Yeah, and they were done after the first year. The last 19 years, they've just been tired and worn out.
Yeah. Top 5 is Florida State, Alabama, Oregon, Oklahoma, Auburn. Georgia's there at 6. Michigan State still at 7. Ohio State moves down to 8. And everything else is kind of copacetic. Everybody moved up a little bit thanks to South Carolina, but not too much movement when it comes to the polls. Looking forward to next week. Couple interesting matchups. USC goes up to Stanford, 12:30 Pacific, 3:30 Eastern on ABC. The first big game in the Pac-12, and that'll it won't necessarily dictate the way the Pac-12 is going to go, but USC could either get on their trail, or Stanford's going to keep marching along, and that's very easily a potential championship game rematch down the road.
Yeah, that's going to set the pace for the Pac-12. I think, especially in USC's case, if they get this win, I like them. Like I said at the preview show, that I like them to win the Pac-12, and if they get this win, I think they're well on their way to doing that.
Another game that could be a pace setter when it comes to playoff implications down the line. Another Pac-12 team, Oregon, hosts number 3 Oregon in our first top 10 matchup of the season. Number 3 Oregon hosts number 7 Michigan State. If Michigan State can go into Eugene and beat the Ducks, that might set the season a little haywire already, because I think that would solidify Michigan State as a true playoff and potential national championship contender, and it would spell doom for Oregon, I think.
It would hurt, because
it would hurt them a lot.
They've still got the Pac-12 schedule to contend with, which are certainly, there are some teams in there that can beat them. That's a huge game for week number 2. I mean, it's got a lot of implications already, which is nice. But I don't know. As much as I like Michigan State, man, that's a tall order to go to Eugene and beat those guys. I don't know if they can pull it off, but I hope they do.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one to watch there, 6:30 Eastern on Fox. Let's see. Your Buckeyes host Virginia Tech. Any concerns?
Yeah, I got a lot of concerns.
UCLA hosts Memphis. Watch your backs, Bruins.
Yeah.
And then, of course, what is going to be the final edition of this matchup for the foreseeable future. Michigan goes to Notre Dame Stadium to play the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. 4:30 Eastern, or 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 Eastern on NBC.
Yeah, it's a shame that game's going away. But as long as do they have special uniforms planned for this?
No.
Good, then it'll look really
so.
good. It'll look good.
No, Michigan has their stupid uniform for their night game against Penn State later in the year. Dark stripes.
We're Michigan. We have lights. Yeah, well, welcome to 1960, guys.
Yeah, and Notre Dame's special uniform they're saving for the biggest matchup of all, Purdue.
Okay.
Everything else looks pretty copacetic. You got some cupcake matchups still.
Yeah,
for the ranked teams.
I
But
really kind of hope as the playoff thing progresses over the next couple of years, we start seeing less and less of these. But
yeah, I mean, it all comes down to how. I mean, we'll see what happens at the end of the year when they do the deliberations. How the strength of schedule plays into effect. Like if you're a good team and you end up with 2 losses, but those 2 losses are to top 5 teams,
right?
Are they going to say, well, they have 2 losses, but they were to, number 2 and number 4.
Right.
They deserve to be in the playoff.
As opposed to, say, a team that gets in there that's say, got 1 loss, but 4 of their wins were against Presbyterian and teams like and Lamar and teams like that.
Right. Week 1 of college football is in the books. We're cruising along. Coming up, look out for Basically Sports Show, our 3-year anniversary. We don't have any retrospectives planned, I don't think.
Nah, I thought about it, but there's
so much work for that to do.
Yeah,
we don't have professional people that archive this crap.
We got damn near 100 shows, and I'm not about to sit and listen to every one of them trying to find good stuff.
I think that's going to do it. Follow us on Twitter. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Spreaker. You know where to find us. You're listening to us. Share it with your friends. It's football season.
That's
Make
right.
it a communal experience.
There you go.
For Greg, I'm Zach. This has been Basically a Football Show. We will see you next week when we get to talk about the National Football League.